Hey, what do you know? The QR code worked. All right, folks, welcome. This is the Paleozoic video, I don't know, review if you want to call it that. In this short video, I'm going to show you some of the major events that happened in the Paleozoic. You can use this to kind of help design what some of the things you want to show up in your geocalendar for the Deep Time Challenge. Now, to be honest, when we're talking Paleozoic, we're talking about, I don't know, about late November and early December. So some of the things that I'm going to show you could show up in your November pictures, or they could show up in your December pictures. And there's a lot to choose from, so you have a lot of options. One of the big things about the Paleozoic is that at the very beginning there's this explosion, and I mean that rhetorically, this is a metaphor, but there's an explosion of diversity. All sorts of crazy new invertebrate animals that have developed hard outer shells start showing up in the Paleozoic. In fact, at first we thought the Paleozoic was when animals or when life first started on the planet, because that's really where we find some of the first fossils, or at least easily. And it took us a long time to realize that there actually were fossils even deeper down in the Precambrian rocks. But they were animals that didn't have hard outer shells, so nothing really got preserved really well. And so for the longest time, it took us quite a bit of time to realize that there's actually life even in the Precambrian. But in the Paleozoic, it really gets going. So what do I mean by invertebrates with hard outer shells? If you remember, invertebrates do not have an internal skeleton. They have like exoskeletons to help protect them. And it's that exoskeleton that's the big thing here in the Paleozoic. Your eyes are probably drawn to this really crazy, cool looking thing in the upper right hand corner. This is a species that's still alive today. It's known as a sea lily, or crinoid is the more technical term. And you can see this thing is crawling around on the bottom of the ocean. This is an animal. This isn't a plant, even though it's called a sea lily. They're called sea lilies because, well, that's kind of what they seem like when you look at them. They look like they're underwater plants. But it's actually an animal. It lives in this long stem here. The stem is hollow, so the animal lives inside the hollow tube. And then these like tendril things, these feather-like things that look like, I don't know, leaves or something, those are actually tendrils of the animal. It's a filter feeder. It doesn't have any teeth. And what it does is it just sucks water through and picks up any little small particles that are in the water, and it filter feeds. So, as creepy as it would seem to wake up and find that thing crawling up your leg, in the middle of the night in your bed, just know that it's not going to be able to bite your face off. It'll just scare the living poop out of you, that's all. And you can see other pictures of really crazy looking critters. A lot of the animals, the invertebrates that were alive in the Paleozoic, are extinct now. Things like trilobites, like you can see over here, and all sorts of really weird, exotic kinds of critters, and even a really weird one right here. Yeah, that's my lame joke for this particular slide. Pretend and laugh. Look at me and start to giggle and say, "Good one, Mr. Rogers," and give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and do that right now. It'll make me feel better. Okay, thanks. Moving on. Let me show you what the water levels were like. If you notice, this is a map of North America. The darker grayish area is where we estimate the oceans were back at the beginning of the Paleozoic. This dashed line right here is actually the equator. And here's Minnesota. And it's not that the equator used to run north and south, it's that the entire continent of North America used to be oriented like this. It used to be down by the equator and pointing kind of in an east-west direction instead of north-south. So at this point, Minnesota was right along the equator, and it was covered, at least in this corner right here, with an ocean. This part was dry land. But at this point in the early Paleozoic, all the life that exists, in the oceans, it's right here in the oceans. There's nothing on dry land, at least at this point. You'll also notice that there are these weird words down here, like Cambrian. These are just smaller chunks of time of the Paleozoic. The first geologic period of the Paleozoic is known as the Cambrian. But watch the water levels when we switch to the Ordovician, the next small time period within the Paleozoic. So a little bit later in time, all of North America floods. And so Minnesota is completely covered by a tropical ocean. We're right here along the equator. The only part that's sticking out is the eastern border here of North America. And as time goes on, you can see the floodwaters increase just a little bit more during the Silurian geologic period of the Paleozoic. During the Devonian period, the ocean levels start to drain a little bit. Water levels go down, and just a little bit of Minnesota is covered at this point. Most of it south of here in Iowa still is covered by ocean. But you can see things are finally starting to dry out. But hold on, because during the Mississippian, the next time period in the Paleozoic, the oceans come flooding again. So Minnesota has been continuously flooded over and over during the Paleozoic, multiple times, covered by an ocean. So it's a story of the seas rolling in, the seas rolling out. All right, so that's the one of the last ones. Here's the last era or geologic period of the Paleozoic era. This is the Permian, and again we're on dry land. So other things that you could maybe put into your calendar, either in November or in December. We have some of the first fish, the first true vertebrates, animals with internal skeletons. Those were fish. Those are the oldest fossils we can find. They should be showing up, I believe, in the early part of November. Yep, first vertebrates are in November 20th, so the second half of November. So interesting times going on there. Also, plants finally start showing up on dry land, so we start seeing fossils of plants on dry land, not until late November, November 24th, according to my calculations. Also in late November, we start seeing the first animals on dry land. Those would be insects. We don't see any vertebrates on dry land during that first initial time. And yes, this is actually an amphibian. This is a gigantic centipede. There was a time when there was a species of centipede that, known as Arthropleura, which was at least 6 feet long. So you could imagine being in a time machine, going back and staring down one of these things. It's pretty crazy. Also during the Paleozoic, we have amphibians. Amphibians show up in early December. Remember, amphibians can't exist away from water for very long. Their skin is not permeable, so they dry out, like frogs and salamanders and things like that. It's not until a little bit later that we start seeing other interesting creatures like the reptiles, which have a much thicker skin, and it's impermeable, and so it doesn't allow water to escape, and so these things can get further away from water. They don't have to lay their eggs in water either, because they can lay eggs with a hard outer shell. So reptiles are a definite improvement, and reptiles should be showing up in early December as well. And we even see proto-mammals. Now, proto is like if you think of the word prototype, proto means early. So there's fossils of animals that lived right near the end of the Paleozoic that had some reptile-like features, but also some mammal-like features. And because of that, we call them proto-mammals, because we have a strong suspicion that that's actually the line of animals that led on to mammals, because they have some of those early traits. And so here are some of the true proto-mammals, like Dimetrodon, this famous one that you might have had a toy of when you were a little kid, has this huge fin back on its back. It's actually a proto-mammal. And then the Paleozoic ends, and the reason why we decide to end the Paleozoic at this particular point is a really horrific event happened, a mass extinction, where 95%, and you read that right correctly there, 95% of all of the species living on the earth at that time became extinct. And so in the fossil record we find all these species, they're there, and then we look at the next layer above, and 95% of them never show up again. So there was some sort of cataclysmic event, something of epic proportions, which wiped out nearly every living thing. And so we decided, hey, this is significant. We're going to end an era here and start a new one. So on the next video link, I'm going to show you some events from the Mesozoic and also from the Cenozoic. We're going to have both of them together. So best of luck to you.